Welcome back all my aspiring pattern makers and my future fashion designers. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the pattern for this oversized baggy pants that has a drawstring at the waist and also drawstring at both hems. To get started, you're going to need a few measurements. You will need a hip measurement, and you will also need the length of the pants from the waist down to the floor. And you will also need your crotch depth. In order to get your crotch depth, you will sit on a chair and use a ruler that is hidden in the chair. Make sure it is lined up with your waist, and that would give you your crotch depth. I'm going to work with the measurements that I have. My hip measurement is 36 and my crotch measurement is 8 1/4. Since it's an oversized baggy pants, we are not going to have it where it's going to be fitting you, but we still need to incorporate the measurements of the hip and the waist when we are making that crotch line, and also when we need to get the extension. First thing, you should create a rectangle, and I would say create this rectangle that is going to literally be 32 inches by the length of the pants. And the reason why I say that is because half of that 32 inches is going to be the half of that pants, right? So you literally need 16 inches from one end to the middle part, and then 16 inches to the other end. So let's say, for instance, this is the length of your pants, and we have our 32 inches going across, which is 16 inches from here to here, which is the middle point, and we get our desired length. And I'm going to draw the desired length to complete the rectangle. Once you have your rectangle here, and you also have your center line going all the way down, the next thing that I need you to do is that you are going to form your crotch depth line. And remember, my crotch depth is 8 1/4, and you're going to add 3/4 of an inch for ease. So you will end up drawing a line 9 inches from the top. And as I said, use your measurements. So if I go 9 inches from the top, should be about here. All right, and you need to also square a line going across. You can use this wonderful ruler that I'm using to do that, or you can simply use your L square. So once you have this, then we need to plan accordingly. So this is going to be the back, and this will be the front. So you have to do an extension here, and I will come all the way out for my extension, and you also will need another extension at the front for the front of the crotch. We have to know how much we are going to extend the crotch line, because this is not your crotch, and you should actually write CROTCH for crotch there. As a disclaimer, let me say this to you, that this is not the regular pants pattern that we are making. This is for the oversized. And even though I went out 16 inches here and another 16 inches because this is 32 inches, this 16 inches would be half of what the back of the pants would be without the crotch area. So it would be 32 inches. So I just want to make that clear with you, because your hip is not actually 16 inches when you're working with it, but you do need your hip measurement. Say, for instance, you are working with a hip measurement of 36. So half of the 36 would be 18 inches. So in actuality, the back of the skirt would be 18 inches for the hip, and the front of the skirt would have 18 inches for the hip, which will give you a total of 36 inches. So for the back extension, we need to focus on half of that back hip measurement, which literally we're focusing on the 9, right? Because 9 plus 9 would be 18. So a half of 9 would be 4.5 inches. So you are going to go out 4.5 inches here for your extension at the back. Okay, so that's your extension at the back, 4.5 inches. So once we do that, then the next thing that we need to do is that at the back and the waist, we are going to come in 1/2 inch, right? So you are going to come in 1/2 inch here. You can put a line there. And when you come in 1/2 inch, you also is going to go up 1/4 inch. All right, and you need to square that. Now, if you are an individual who have a bigger size derriere, then you need to go up 3/8 inch to 1/2 inch at the back. But for a slim person like me that doesn't have much going on at the back, then 1/4 inch up is good enough. Now what you'll do next, you will divide this extension, which is the 4.5, into 3 parts, and you will get 1.5 inches, and then another 1.5 inches right here. And at that 1.5 inches, you need to go up here like 1 inch. Once you have that, then you are going to use your hip curve right here, and that hip curve, I'm going to use it to curve it like that. And be careful so you don't go below the line. All right, must be on the line. And for the waist, at the side seam, I usually go up 1/8 inch. You don't need to go up 1/4 inch because it's going to taper down to nothing at the front. So 1/8 is good enough for here. Remember, we went up 1/4 here, but if you have a bigger derriere, then you need to extend that some more and go up to as much as 1/2 inch. So this is what we have. Then the next thing we're going to do is that we are going to find the knee level. The knee level is usually from the distance between the crotch level and the hem halfway. So once you have that measurement, if your length is 40 inches and you have here 9 inches down, and so you will have a 31 inches left, then you will need simply 15.5 inches for that. But remember, I'm not using the actual length of the paper here, so I'm just going to do half of this for demonstration purposes. So I need to go about here. Once you have that, then you square a line across. You can once again use your square rule, or you can use this fancy ruler that I like to use because it gives me an accurate measurement. Because this is a baggy pants, right? We're not going to come straight to this line right here, okay? You don't need to come straight to that line. If you were working with a regular pants, then we could have done that. I just want to go out an extra 2 inches here because we're doing a baggy pants. And then you can shape that up to that crotch line. Make sure that your extension is going out, and then you should be fine. Okay, so we can do this. Okay, and then you should be fine. And with this, what you'll do, you will just now give like 1 inch down at the bottom and the hem, and you will also shape that down to there. From the square area right here at the waist, at the center back, about 3/16 inch in, you can start curving that to the 1/8 mark that you went up at the side seam. And once you do that, then the front, you do the same thing, right? Where you will simply, with the front now, is going to nothing at the front. So you will end up like this. So about 1/4 inch in, again, at the front, keep the square there, and you continue to make that joining with what you have at the back. Now, this would be your side seam. This is the front. So now we are going to work on the front crotch extension. The front crotch extension is usually 1/4 of your hip measurement. So you can now take that 9 inches and find 1/4 of that. So 1/2 of the 9 inches was 4.5, and 1/2 of 1/2 is 1/4. So that would be 2 1/4. And you will mark that right there. And that's going to be your extension. What you do next is that you are going to use your hip curve at the curved area here, and you're going to put it like this, and you're going to shape out the crotch area, and that's your front crotch. You don't have to do anything with the center front of the pants. You just have to focus on the back part. Now, as I stated before, this is a baggy pants, so I don't have to go by the rule of making a regular trouser or a slack pants because this is baggy. So what I could do, I have my extension here at the knee level, right? And I'm just saying the knee level, but normally you go up an inch above when you're joining what you're joining. So if this is, say, we went on here 2 inches here on the front, I can go out 1.5 inches, and that should be fine. And then you are going to simply shape it like this. And you would also go out here. You can go out 1 inch right here. You can just do this. Draw your line. Now right here is a little kink, so make sure that you get that out, okay? And you smooth it out, all right? Smooth it out. Smooth operator. So this is what the pants pattern looks like. You would slash along this line and then add your seam allowance afterwards. You don't need to do anything with the hem more than add your 1/2 inch seam allowance there. And also for the waist, you would add your 1/2 inch seam allowance along there and your 1/2 inch also along the crotch area. So all of this area needs to have your 1/2 inch seam allowance, okay, going all around. And I'm actually going to put it in red, right, because that's what you need to do. Your waistline, 1/2 inch, and you do the same. So after you have all your seam allowances, right, on everything, and you're going to add your seam allowances here also, going all the way around and going all the way down. And remember, when you cut this out, you're going to add seam allowance here and on this side also. So don't forget to do that. So this is what the oversized baggy pants pattern looks like. But we're not done. We have the back and the front of the pants. We now need to make the pattern for the drawstring casing for the waist area and also a drawstring casing for the hem. Say for instance, I got the back waist of 15.5 because you would measure this. You have to add 1 inch seam allowance and then that will give you 16.5. Once you have that 16.5 inches, then you're going to decide how wide you want that drawstring casing to be. So I'm going to say I need 3/4 of an inch. You can do 1 inch, but I figure 3/4 of an inch is fine. So if you need 3/4 of an inch and then you need a 1/2 inch seam allowance also, what you will do, you will add that. So it's 3/4 times 2, which would be 1.5 inches plus 1 inch. So you need to do a rectangle for the back waist casing for the drawstring, where it's going to be 2.5 inches wide by 16.5 inches, and that's also what measurement you got here. And for the front, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to measure the top right along the waist area, and you're going to times it by 2. Say for instance with mine I got a 7 inches, so that would be 14 inches for the front, back, right? And for the front I got 14, but I need to add an inch for turning under the edge of the casing, so that would give you 15 inches by 2.5 inches for the casing. So that's what you need. Then for the hem, you measure the hem. Say for instance if you got 8 inches going across for the hem for the front, then you also have to measure the back. Let's say if you measure the hem front and back and you got say 16.25 like I did here, so this is for the hem. Add your 1 inch for your turn under on both sides, so 17.25 times, and I'll say this also we are going to make it 3/4 inch width, so times 2.5 inches, and you need 2 of this, so 2 pieces, front and back. So now that we have the pattern for the casing, we are going to simply create rectangles in that dimension, right? And that would be your pattern pieces for the casing for the drawstring. So now we need to actually make the string that is going to go through all of this. Now if your total measurement here for the back, and we have 16.5, we need to add an extra at least 4 inches, I would say, on either side. So let's round that to be say 20 inches for the drawstring. So I'm going to say drawstring here for the waist. Back is 20 inches plus the front, originally 15.5, and I'm going to add say 4 inches. Let's make it 22, so 20 by 20. So that would be a total of 40 inches there for the drawstring that's going to go through. This is a unique pants because you don't need just one drawstring, you need 2 pieces of drawstring, because we're going to draw both at the same time. We call it a double drawstring. So you need 2 pieces, right? At least say 41 inches long by, and I say let's make your drawstring finish end 1/2 inch, because if the casing is 3/4 inch, you need room for it to pull through. So let's say 1/2 inch, so you need it by 2 inches. As a matter of fact, for the drawstring, you didn't need to use 1/2 inch seam allowance when you're completing it. You can simply use 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if you're using 1/2 inch seam allowance to complete it, you need a 41 inch by 2 inches, and you need 2 pieces. But if you are going to use 1/4 inch seam allowance, then it's 41 by 1.5 inches for your drawstring. So the hem drawstring, now you need 4 pieces, okay? For the string that's going to go through the hem, we already established that the hem is 17.25 inches, but we need room to hold onto that end pieces so that we can draw it through. And the minimum room we need is 5 inches, the minimum. All right, we need more than that, but minimum 5 inches, because you need space for you to grab onto that to pull both sides. So 22 by 2 inches, and you're going to need 2 pieces, right? 22 by 2 inches or 22 by 1.5 inches, and you need 4 pieces. For those strings, you can either create the pattern for the rectangle or just simply lay it out, use your ruler and mark it out and then cut it out. So these are the pattern pieces for this pants that we are going to make. So there is an optional way of making this pattern for this oversized baggy pants. And the optional way is that you don't have to start from scratch like what I just did. What you can do, if you have an existing pair of pants pattern, then you can use that and use the slash and spread method, or you can simply use the spreading method and create the pattern for that. Now I'm going to show you how to go about doing so. So the other method for creating this pattern, once you already have an existing pants pattern, is simply going to be trace out your pattern pieces, slash down the center, and then spread it to get that width that we are trying to get. Now, I would suggest that your width that you should be using from your crotch extension to the hip on the back piece should be no more than, I would say, 21 inches. So just bear that in mind, because the fabric that you're going to use is a 45-inch width fabric, so you don't want to pass the 22. But if you're using a 60-inch, then yes, you can go further and make that up to, say, 29. Be careful. If you are using a 60-inch width fabric and you want to make it as wide as you want to in terms of the width, then the ratio of 2 to 1 is good for your waist measurement to your casing for your drawstring. So this is what your pants pattern is looking like. You are going to create the grain line on your paper. So you're going to lay your paper down where you have the grain line being seen, line it up, and then you will have your line here. You can use your marker, and you have the line going like that. The next thing you will need is your crotch level line. So you can do one of two things. You already have it on your pattern for your pants, and you will simply place it like this and just extend it here. Once you have this, I would suggest that you mark a little bit of the waist down along the side seam, right? Going all along. And once you get to the crotch level, you can stop right there, because we just need to square that. That doesn't need to be curving, all right? Then you will go ahead and you will create that as a straight line. Okay, and you will do the same thing for the bottom. Have that as a straight line going down. Okay, so once you have this, now you're going to decide how wide you want this to go in terms of spreading it. So you will take the measurement that you have on the front of your pants. Well, actually, this is the back of your pants. And for my pants, I have a total of 15 inches here. Now, in terms of the fabric width, for a 45 width fabric, I need to go up to at least at 22 inches. But if you're using a 60-inch width fabric, then you can go further. And this is the back of the pants. Now, if you're using the front of the pants, you don't need to go that far. So just the back, you want to go close to the 22 inches for that width when it is doubled. So what I need now, because this is 15, right? I don't want to go too close, so I'm going to add an extra, I would say, let's add 6 inches. I don't want to go exactly to the 22, so I'm going to add 6 inches. So I'm going to make my spread 6 inches wide. From your grain line, you go out 6 inches. You put a mark there, right? And you do the same thing for the bottom. You go out 6 inches and you put a mark there. Okay. What you'll do now is that you want to make sure that mark that you have for the 6 inches is going to be perpendicular to the crotch line. And you draw a line from the top, come down like that. Once you have that, you're going to extend this also. You need to extend this line. This is your crotch line. So once you have your crotch line extended, then you need to place this here. All right. Yeah. Place your weight on that. You're going to see where this ends up down here. Yep. There it is. So you place the weight there. You can place another one. And all you have to do now is you're going to shape around the back for about 2 inches on the waist and go to the center back, and you are going to curve that out, come down like this. All right, and come down. Now for the back of the pants, let me say something. You don't even need that much depth. It's up to you. You can start making it square from about here, which is about the knee level, right? You can start making that square, or you can go over some more and then shape it back to that, and then that would be your pants. All right, so you can do that. Shape it out. This is all because it is a oversized baggy pants, so we can take out this and just use this line to curve it out. Then you would go back to your waist now, and you have about 2 inches in here, and you'd simply just join those 2 lines right there to get your waist for the back of the pants, the rest of the waist, okay? And in terms of the length, you just continue across and you will have the length of your pants. Since this is your slash and spread method, you note that you went out 6 inches here. For the front of the pants, you can do the same thing and you go out your 6 inches when you do the spread method after you've laid the front of that slipper also. So this is the front. You use your grain line as your marker and you do the 6 inches from your grain line right there, and you go out your 6 inches too. Let's measure this. It is good to note that you should not be passing 20 inches at least. All right, so here we are. This is 13, and then by the time I add the 6 inches, it will take me to 19 inches. So that is good for the front of the pants at the crotch level. So once you have this, then you do the same thing as we did for the casing for the double drawstring for the waist and the hem casing for the 2 legs. Remember, the hem casing, you need 4 pieces of that long string. For the waist, you need 2 pieces for the casing, and you need 2 pieces for the entire string. All right, so just be careful. Now it's time to lay out the pattern and cut it out, and then once you cut it out and you sew it, then you're good to go. So in conclusion, now that you know how to make the pattern for this oversized baggy double drawstring pants, I hope that you will give it a try. I have taught you 2 different methods of creating the pattern for this pants, and you can choose whichever method that suits you. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you like what you see, go ahead and also hit that like button. Don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Go ahead and share this video with others around the world so they too can level up, and make a pattern for this oversized baggy drawstring pants. Thank you for watching, and see you soon on the next video to come. Bye now. Cheers.